Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining me. As the United States sanctioned two Russian oil companies, Lukoil and Rosneft, and the EU adopted the 19th sanctions package, there is this joyful expectation in the EU that now the Russian economy is just about to collapse. What the previous 18 rounds of sanctions failed to accomplish, these recent attempts will surely get the job done. Well, let me tell you why Russian economy will be just fine. At the recent Russian Energy Week in Moscow, Russia sent a very powerful message to the world. It isn't retreating from the global energy stage, it's reshaping it. And as a major energy producer, it has quite a bit of room to maneuver. It's the consumers, such as the EU, for example, that are being cornered by their own leaders. The annual Energy Forum, one of the largest in Eurasia, by the way, brought together Russian and foreign producers, top executives, and government officials under one very, very ambitious theme, creating the energy of the future together. And it wasn't just another conference about pipelines and oil prices. It was about redefining the very architecture of global energy and Russia's role at its very center. President Vladimir Putin, speaking at the session, effectively set the tone. He declared that Russia's strategic goal is not simply to remain a major player, but to strengthen its position as a global energy leader while also building a fair and sustainable energy model for future generations. What does that even mean in simple terms? Well, energy is not only about profits and exports, it's about national development, it is about technological innovation and environmental balance. It is especially important, Putin said, to effectively manage resource production and reserves and ensure the technological and environmental development of the industry in order to supply the domestic market, achieve national goals, and fulfill external agreements. In essence, the Russian leader was making 2 points. First, that energy is the backbone of Russia's economy and diplomacy, and second, that Moscow's energy strategy is evolving beyond mere extraction. It is becoming a platform for innovation, for partnership with new nations, and of course, for its own sovereignty. Today's energy industry is no longer really about who has the biggest oil fields. It's about who can combine resources with technology, and here Russia wants to position itself as both an energy superpower and a technology hub. The focus was very clear: modernization, digitalization, and resilience. And in addition to that, there is a much deeper geopolitical shift, which I would like to focus on next. Global energy supply chains are changing very rapidly, as you may have noticed, and not just because of markets, but because of politics. That's what's driving these quite deep changes. Since 2022, the European Union has worked to phase out Russian gas, a move that many in Moscow now see as Europe's self-inflicted wound, which it is. It's very difficult to argue with that. And in response, Russia has pivoted decisively toward Asia, toward countries that, in Putin's words, act reasonably based on their own national interests. And of course, here he was alluding to the EU effectively losing its sovereignty to the United States. This eastward pivot has already begun to reshape global energy flows. Russian liquefied natural gas, its oil, and coal are increasingly heading to India, to China, and other Asian markets. The European era of Russian energy exports is fading, but there is a new one that is emerging in the global south. In Europe, industrial output is declining, and naturally, energy demand has fallen with that. At the same time, in Asia and in Latin America, regions that are still industrializing, the appetite for affordable, for reliable energy source is stronger than ever before. And that's where Russia sees its future. Putin framed Europe's move as a mistake that only accelerated this transformation. It actually benefited Russia in certain ways. The European Union's démarche, he said, only sped up the shift in the trajectory of our exports in favor of our promising and responsible buyers. The transformation hasn't gone unnoticed in Washington. Trump asked Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi to stop purchasing Russian oil and gas. I've talked about this at length here on my channel. He also pressed China to, quote, reconsider its purchases. It's not going to happen. We know that very well. But it is part of a broader American attempt to squeeze Moscow's energy revenues through political pressure. But the results have been limited at best. Despite repeated calls from Washington, India has not stopped importing Russian oil. In fact, discounted Russian crude now makes up roughly 34% of India's total hydrocarbon imports. Why? Well, this is because, as Indian Business Council president explained, it's simple economics. And this has nothing to do with politics. It's simple economics. And of course, national interest. Russian oil remains the most cost-effective option. India, he said, thinks first of itself, its national security, its consumers, and its relations with various countries. It is a statement that effectively captured the new reality. The global south no longer takes orders from Washington or from Brussels. Russia, in turn, has adjusted its trade structure with India. What was once primarily about energy now includes consumer goods and broader economic cooperation. So the India-Russia trade has been expanding beyond energy imports. Russia's energy industry now attracts roughly $125 billion in investment every single year, accounting for about 16 to 20% of its national GDP. That is a massive share. Energy, once of course used as a tool of Western dominance, is being redefined as a tool of multipolar cooperation, and instead of one center of power controlling access and prices, Russia envisions a system where multiple players, not just Russia, but multiple players, Asia, Africa, Latin America, they work together to create what Vladimir Putin called a fair and sustainable global energy model. The model, at least in theory, would ensure stability for producers and for consumers. Of course, there will be challenges, and I'm sure there will be certain issues, but it won't be easy, of course, to transition to the new energy model. But I think it is fair to say that the shift has already begun. It showed that Russia's strategy now rests on three pillars: diversification, innovation, and new partnerships. Diversifying export routes away from Europe, innovating its energy technology and environmental efficiency, and building partnerships with countries that share one core belief: the national interest comes before foreign pressure. Let me know what you think about the new paradigm shift. As always, I would love to hear from you in the comments below. Thank you very much for watching. I hope that you consider supporting my work. Become a subscriber on YouTube, Substack, and Patreon. You will find those platforms linked in the video description below. Enjoy the rest of your day, and as always, I will see you here tomorrow. Take care.